Bloodragers are berserkers who succumb to the rage to increase their power in melee fights. Today I am going to teach you about the Bloodrager class and give you a really good starter build to get you going. Let's go. Today's video is brought to you by you watching this video. If you enjoy it, please hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments below what other classes you would like me to do. Let's go! My aim for these videos is to give you an overview of the class itself and a rough starter build that will give you some success on core difficulty and below. With the Bloodrager, they are a hybrid class of a sorcerer and a barbarian, giving them the rage ability. It's called blood range here, but it's basically the same thing, as well as a bloodline like a sorcerer has. Most blood rages are a melee character with either a strong emphasis on using a melee weapon, maybe a little bit focused on spells, or depending on the archetype you choose, you may also focus on having an animal companion. The first archetype is the Blood Rider, which gives you an animal companion. You do lose some of the dodge and movement abilities that a Blood Rager does have. They usually allow you to move a little bit faster in combat, dodge some attacks with a higher AC, but you trade this off for an animal companion. The Green Ranger is the next archetype, which is focusing on more on speed, as well as giving you some summoning abilities to summon some creatures to help you in combat. The Mixed Blood Rager allows you to change your bloodline after the character creator. Once per day, you can change your bloodline to something else. Bloodlines is something we'll get into a little bit later, but if that's something you're looking for, that is the archetype you want. Primalist, which is the one that we are going to be picking, gives you more abilities based around your blood rage. It makes you rage harder, I guess is a good way to describe it. The Reformed Fiend is basically a demon that has come back to the light. They lose some of their damage reduction and bloodline effects, focusing more on fighting evil characters and giving them more resistances against evil characters. Spell Eaters give you the Blood of Life and Spell Eating, which allow you to eat a spell basically and consume health, so it's not a bad option if you're looking to maybe be a tank. You also lose out on the damage reduction effects in favor of the healing instead. And a Steel Blood is basically a tank. You get heavy armor proficiencies, some other armor training and benefits as well, but you do lose the damage reduction and the dodge abilities of the Blood Rager. The main focus for this build is going to be on the Primalist. The reason we are focusing on this is because the main focus that I want to have is on Blood Rage. This build will give us a ton of extra benefits from having Blood Rage active all of the time, which is what we're going to have. It will increase the attack and damage rolls increases that we get, as well as allowing us to do some other things with this Blood Rage active. Now, the focus on the build is really as a tank. You are kind of a DPS a little bit. You can dish out a decent amount of damage. It's not like God tier damage rolls. You're not going to be able to, crit everything all of the time. You do a decent amount of damage, but the key focus is on avoiding damage, and this is why this build works really well on the high difficulties, because we have such a high armor class. We can avoid damage coming at us from pretty much everything. There's multiple turns that I've had where I won't actually take any damage. I'm going to be playing this hilarious clip at the moment where I was absolutely getting rolled. Everyone else was dead, but my Blood Rager wasn't taking any damage because of his armor class, and his strength was like all gone because I didn't have any spells to really help him here, and he just managed to clear the fight by himself, and it was hilarious. It was such a good time. So I really like this build, and that's why we've gone this direction. The first thing we're going to focus on though is race. Now you could go a human or a dwarf, although the lack of charisma that you get for a dwarf is a slight problem, but the constitution is great. The best race to pick is the Oread for the extra strength and charisma you get from the Gem Soul Oread specifically, because we are focusing on strength and charisma is our spell modifier. For your attributes, it'll probably look something a little like this. You want to max out your strength as high as possible, as well as then put your constitution up, and for charisma, you want to be around the 12-14 mark. It doesn't matter too much. This is your spell casting modifier, but we're not casting spells all of the time. We really just want to have a really strong melee weapon and ability to cast some spells in some situations. I would dump intelligence and wisdom as low as possible and give you a little bit of dexterity in favor of this, because having an initiative and armor class is never a bad thing when you are a melee focused character. For your skills, the main ones we're looking at is athletics and persuasion. Persuasion because it is one, a charisma skill, and we do have a bit of charisma, but also because we are going to be using feats where we will be casting a persuasion intimidation check as a free action to demoralize enemies, something like the corner gun smash or the power attack, different abilities that you can get. This is a really important skill to have as a Blood Rager. Athletics as well is also important, and maybe a little bit of mobility so that you can move around a little bit in combat. It's never a bad thing for a melee focused character. Now, as mentioned, we have gone Draconic as our bloodline. You can get a dragon form with this line as you do progress, so you can actually transform into a dragon, but that is really up to you if you do want to take that route and fight in combat as a dragon, but you could just wield a sword even instead. For our Bloodrager feats, we have gone with the weapon focused greatsword, as that is the greatsword weapon that I am using. You could honestly choose whatever weapon you like. You just really need to pick up that weapon focus for whichever weapon you decide to use. Secondly, we have gone power attack, which is an absolute must to pick up. You can choose to take a 1 penalty on all melee attack rolls and combat maneuver checks to gain a +2 bonus on all melee damage rolls. So you basically trade 1 attack roll for 2 damage rolls. Next, I've picked up Dazzling Display. While wielding a weapon in which you have weapon focus, which we do because we are using a greatsword, you can perform a bewildering show of a prowess as a full action attack. Make a persuasion check to demoralize all foes within 30 feet you can see your display. We've also doubled down on this with the Cornigan Smash, so when we damage enemies with power attacks, as most of the time we're dealing power attacks, it gives us that extra demoralize on the enemy that we are attacking if we don't want to go the Dazzling Display route. I've also gone Cleaving Finish, or Cleave in general, because we will be doing a little bit of cleave with the greatsword. You can sometimes finish off one enemy and then attack it with the other. There's a little bit of fun that you can have there, but I'm not really sure with the feats. If you've got any better options, do let me know in the comments down below. Mythic feats or mythic paths I don't often talk about in these videos, but for the Bloodrager, there is 2 that you specifically have to look at. Limitless Rage is the main one, and you have to pick this up as soon as possible. This removes the restrictions on your blood range, so you can have it active all of the time, and you never have to worry about it. You don't get fatigued by using it multiple times a day. The second one that you need to pick up is the ability to have a second bloodline, which we have put into Arcane so that we can use those extra abilities. Inside and outside of combat, we can actually cast things like Blur or Haste, basically as a swift action or a free action, and displacement as well, so you can increase your armor class as much as possible without worrying about having to use it as a spell and not being able to attack in the same turn. With the bonus feats that I have got, I've picked up Arcane Rounds, so spending a swift action each round, you can imbue your weapons to deal 1 damage, and it gets treated as a magic attack rather than a standard attack for damage reduction. I've also picked up Toughness, as this is kind of a tank focused build, so that when we do actually take some damage, even though we do have a high armor class, we do get a little bit of extra health when we do take some of those shots. I've also picked up Disruptive as well, so the DC to cast spells defensively increases by 4 when enemies that are within 10 feet of you, as most of the time there will be enemies. You also get access to some spells as a Bloodrager, and we're not really heavily focusing on spells, but some that you should look at is the melee touch spells like Burning Hands and Corrosive Touch. You should pick these up. I think a ranged option like having Magic Missile isn't a bad option either. That's why I have chosen that, and True Strike, just so that we can actually hit some enemies that have been concealed, because as you get further in the game, there's going to be a lot of concealed enemies. I've also picked up False Life and Mirror Image so that we can increase our resistances. False Life gives you extra hit points, and Mirror Image makes you harder to hit, which is a key focus for this build. Same as with our spells level 3. The main one I have picked is Haste, which we do cast it most of the time as a free action. However, if you don't have that, you then can cast it as a level 3 spell as well. To touch on equipment briefly, it is up to you what you do want to run with. I personally have been using a greatsword, though you could really choose proficiency in any kind of a weapon. If you want to go the tank kind of route that I have played a little bit with, you could go a one-handed weapon and a shield, like a flail and a shield, or a sword and a shield, something like that. But I personally just like using a two-handed weapon and getting the cleave actions that we have been doing with the feats. Basically, the way this build works is just avoiding that damage that's coming towards you. I played around with this a lot with Fae and then with Arcane, and how to really get this to work out. This is what I feel has been working best, but a multi-class option for this class is the Dragon Disciple. If you wanted to play around with getting even further down into the Draconic line, you could pick a couple of points into the Draconic Discipline if you wanted to do that. However, I wouldn't suggest it too much, as we are getting a Draconic form or Dragon form from our Draconic Bloodline anyway, but it's just up to you. Some other tips is always have a healer around you. Probably Social is a really good option for this, because he can be close by and he can just tap you with some heals real quick, as you won't have any heals yourself. Keep your buffs active, like your Blur, like Haste. Keep it active so that you can move into combat quickly, you can avoid the damage coming, and really just stay alive constantly. always have Blood Range active. You can turn off things like your power attacks when you are hitting enemies that have a higher armor class, so you do have a higher chance to hit, but always keep your Blood Rage active because that is the key focus of this build. And otherwise, guys, check out my combat video, which goes through everything you need to know about combat in Pathfinder from turn-based to real-time. Please follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and on Twitch. I'm doing a lot of streams on YouTube at the moment, on Tuesday nights most likely, and a little bit over the weekend, so please come by and let's have a chat about this great game. Thank you for watching this video. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.